Welcome back, everybody. This is Matt Williamson of Pop Goes the 60s, and with me is colleague John Heaton again, and we're here to review another Beatles solo album, and we're going to be doing London Town. And this is an album that I actually like, and I think it's a favorite of John's. John, what is your feeling on this album overall?
Well, it's just extremely close to my heart because it was the first album I actually bought with my own money. I seem to remember in
Hmm.
Boots in Rugby. I can still remember looking at the inner sleeve within the record with that multicolored thing and the poster and being very excited. I mean, thinking, yeah, this is good, and getting it back and giving it a spin. I seem to remember I didn't particularly warm to it on the first listen, but it didn't take long.
Hmm. I didn't listen to this album till much later. So in my high school and college years, after I had accumulated all the Beatles stuff, I started getting all the solo stuff. And this was when I got, I don't even remember when I got it. But one of the things I liked about it is that it had this British folk feel to it. And from my ears, this is as close to a concept album as McCartney ever really got without maybe even trying. And the title London Town really, I think, reflects the music on it. So and there's really not, I don't feel like he's trying too hard here, to really jump on any trends at all. And that's one thing I've been a little bit hard on him for. But I think
Yeah.
he gives it to us pretty straight here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a mix because obviously it's called London Town and some of the tracks were recorded in London, but a good chunk of it was recorded out in the US Virgin Islands on a boat. And you get that kind of vibe listening to some of the tracks like Don't Let It Bring You Down. And then they recorded the title track in London and Children Children Name and Address back in London. But it still hangs well together as a kind of album. I think it's quite coherent. Um, you're going to mention some of the reviews, that hilarious one from Rolling Stone.
Yeah, before I get to the reviews, I want
Yeah,
to just give this some chart information. Some of the history claims that this album was kind of the beginning of McCartney's commercial decline. Now, this album hit number two in the States, and it may have hit number one, but it was the number one album for 25 straight weeks was Saturday Night Fever. So
yeah,
that was just a juggernaut that nobody seemed to be able to displace. And this album was number four in the UK. So this was a legitimate hit. It sold, it hit platinum in the US and did start falling off the charts maybe sooner than some of the other albums because he had done, I think it was five number one albums in a row at this point. So this one, oops, it only got to number two. So if that's a decline, okay, I guess technically it is, but not by much.
well, I think by this time, I guess we're going to get onto this. By this time, he wasn't flavor of the month, and there were a lot of new bands coming up like Talking Heads and Blondie, who seemed to the younger kids to be sort of more have more of an edge to them. And so Wings kind of took a back seat along with other groups of a similar style, I guess. Even ABBA sort of their hit making capability sort of went down a bit towards the end of the 70s. But they were still popular. But I guess it's like the recent McCartney stuff. It hit number one and then it fell off fairly quickly.
Yeah, I still think that a lot of other contemporaries of McCartney faced the same thing. I mean, you had the new wave coming up, which was huge and really great. I mean, it was talk about having an edge. And that's something that McCartney's never been accused of, is having an edge in his solo career. And I think he's always been gauged against the edgier bands. That's just how it's been with him. And though he may try to be edgy at times, Blondie and the Talking Heads, he's not going to catch them. That's for sure.
No.
Not during this time anyway. So, but anyway, that's aside from that. I mean, a lot of his contemporaries were up against the same thing, and they also saw some chart failures, and they started to dip a bit as well. George Harrison being a key, but I think generally, this album wasn't reviewed very well, and McCartney's albums generally don't get well reviewed. Well, at least by Rolling Stone. So let's start with the Rolling Stone because it provides a laugh for me. And I think there's a writer here by the name of Janet Maslin, and let me just tell you what she wrote about London Town back in '78. London Town is so lighthearted that the album's feeling of familial strength and affection is virtually the only thing that binds it to the earth. Paul and Linda McCartney and Denny Lane, who qualifies as an honorary Uncle Denny or something, fit blithely from fairy tale with virtually no notion that there's a real world out there, let alone a real audience. Now,
Yeah,
I thought that's hilarious. It's great writing,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
would say that this album hit number two in platinum in the United States. So, I mean, there's no way you can say that it doesn't have an audience.
Well, I mean, it comes down to is music there to entertain people, or is it there to have a message, or is it there to depress you? So I just want to compare something like listening to this album, which I found immensely uplifting, even if it is on another planet half the time, versus listening to, for example, a particularly depressing Roger Waters solo album. I mean, it's just going to depress you, and I don't think that's the purpose of music. I think music is meant to be uplifting, not necessarily the lyrics have to be banal or anything, but these lyrics are not particularly banal. I think they're just escapist and fantasist in some cases, and I think it works well considering where they were when they recorded it in the middle
Yeah,
of the ocean.
yeah, exactly. Good music should move you, and that's you when it does move you, that's what people try to put into words. And I think that London Town is as moving as any of his albums, really. I kind of rank this similarly to Ram in the way I how I rank the albums. It's I would say about as good as Ram and those two and Band on Run being his top albums of the decade. And I think because this album holds together so well, and from somebody who's doesn't live in the UK, was there a feeling that this was a return to any roots at all? I mean, I feel that it has an overwhelming feeling of British folk sprinkled throughout this. Was that something that over by you guys that you noticed or recognized or valued even?
Well, I mean, Matt, I was 14 at the time, so I was too busy defending myself against people saying wings were not cool. So yes, they are. And so I also listen to AC/DC and stuff. It's just that I always was there to defend Wings, and I didn't see it as a return to anything because it was, as I say, the first album I had of his. I think the first song I heard of his was Mull of Kintyre on Top of the
Hmm.
Pops, Christmas '77, when my mum walked into the room and said that guy used to be in the Beatles. And I said, really? And so I sat up and took notice. And then the following single was With a Little Luck, which came out a week before the album. And I didn't buy the single, but I bought the album. So to me, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, with hindsight, yeah, maybe it is a return to something or other. And a lot of Beatlesque tricks used in some of the melody structure and the instrumentation. London Town, the title track in particular, I think is could have easily been, as Cara and Tyler said, written a decade earlier during that
Hmm.
kind of 67, 68 period.
Hmm. Yeah, this is more of a return to Pepperland than he probably has ever done. I The song Mull of Kintyre, I mean that was wound up on Wings Greatest, which was a big hit here in the States. But obviously it didn't even chart here. So it seems to me, I know it was one of the biggest hits in the UK ever. So that the success of that song must have dovetailed into the release of this album to some degree. And I think this album carries that feel of Mull of Kintyre. Maybe that's why McCartney went that direction because of the success of Mull of Kintyre.
Well, I think by the time Mull of Kintyre was released, he'd virtually finished the album. And
Okay.
he was considering putting it on the album. He was advised against it, and he thinks that was a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake at all. I don't think Mull of Kintyre particularly belongs on the record any more than Girls' School. I think it was a good standalone single, and the US made the decision to promote Girls' School. It only got to number 33, despite the fact it's a strong rocker. I guess they thought there wasn't too much of a Scottish community stateside. I don't know how American fans view it now. Bit of a curio, I would guess.
Yeah, it's a curio. I think people like it and people don't dislike it, so far as I can tell. And we'll get into Mull of Kintyre a little bit later as we talk about the track listing. I
Shoot
do
me.
know that McCartney was, I don't know if this was retrospective, but he was a little bit dismayed with Mull of Kintyre in the States, how it didn't really get picked up at all. And like you said, Girls School, they flip it over and play the B-side, only got to number 33, which is an okay song, but it's not memorable really. In fact, I had to listen to it again. I said, what was that song again? For doing this video. But let me just give you the second half of this contemporary review from the Rolling Stone by Janet Maslin, which is interesting. She says McCartney has long since established himself as rock's answer to Peter Pan and hopes in those tall tale numbers in which he seems to be both a spellbinding grown up and an enraptured child have a very special tenderness. Another side of him which began to rear its head is the playful defensiveness of silly love songs that turns up in this time in Famous Groupies, a dry, slightly bitchy song indicating that idle chatter about Linda McCartney still gets the family's goat. So he's sounds like that was interesting because I didn't really pick up on that as being anything involving Linda. I mean, I was
I
was
don't,
that a topic that she was a groupie still at this
no, no,
time?
I don't think it is. I think they're just nonsense lyrics. It's one of the tricks that McCartney did so often, which Lennon criticized, making up stories about hypothetical characters who didn't exist. There was a young guitarist who lived in Epping Forest, and all he ever wanted was to blow. But when the girls were with him, he never lost his rhythm. It's not written about anyone in particular. It's just
Mhm.
a fun set of lyrics. So I don't know how she read the fact that it was about Linda.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's just another kind of rip on Linda. Anybody's wife of a rock star could be accused of that. I mean, rock stars aren't usually dating Rhodes Scholars, that's just not how it works. So that's just another Linda dig, I think. There must have been some difficulty in recording this album because he lost two members at the end of the album, and those two members are Jimmy McCulloch and Joe English, and they don't even appear on the cover or any of the photography. So I don't know too much about their departures, but it must not have been harmonious.
Well, Jimmy was his behavior was becoming erratic. He often had too much to drink and whatever else. And there's various stories, whether you believe it or not, I'm not sure. But I don't think Paul was too upset when he handed in his notice. He went to join the Small Faces for a while before dying the following year, unfortunately. Joe English just got homesick. He didn't want to be in the UK. He wanted to go back to the States. That was fairly amicable. He was on the Mulligan recording before heading back. But I don't blame Paul for deleting them from the packaging because they'd left the band.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I think he deleted them so cleanly because the poster that came with it has the backside of the poster is this kind of white album style collage with,
yeah,
100 pictures and they're not on it. So I think it was deliberate on McCartney's part to excise them. I mean, obviously they're in the credits of on the album jacket of that they play on the entire album,
yeah,
basically. So I always just thought that maybe after the long touring that they were doing, that that gets grueling, and maybe it just got to be too much. And they had already been with McCartney since right after Band on the Run. So that's the definitive Wings lineup, is it not?
yeah. To me, it is. I mean, Jimmy joined sometime in '74. Joe English early in '75, I think. So yeah, the prospect of touring was not exactly on the horizon because Linda had just given birth to James. But they wouldn't have had to wait too long because Wings did go back on the road with Back to the Egg the following year. So I don't know. It's just bands chemistry. It happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a disaster. I think the fact Wing as long as Paul, Linda, and Denny there, Wings go on. It doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. With all due respect to the other guys, that they were replaceable, um, and they were replaced.
I suppose they were replaceable, but I would say McCullough and English were the two best instrumentalists he ever had with him. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
McCullough,
with you.
in
If you force me
question
to
that
back, if you force me to
Jimmy, as a guitar player, he was incredibly fine player, a child prodigy. It's too bad that he burned out, on drugs and drinking, like a lot of rock stars do. But McCartney really got the benefit of these two guys, and I think that Wings Over America really proves it. I mean, that album was great because I think of the players he had with him, and these two guys were part of that. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's worth giving them some props.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching Rock Show over the weekend. Well, I've been watching quite a bit of Wings since Denny's sad passing, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing band. Joe English's drumming is just outstanding, and Jimmy's guitar and Denny playing that double, whatever it's called, with the
The double neck, yeah.
double neck, just brilliant. Yeah,
Well, let's talk about Denny Lane. I almost never talk about Denny Lane, and you actually knew him a little bit and had seen him many times, met him on multiple occasions, and he has got quite a lot of input on this album. I think four co-writes plus
five,
co-writing Well of
five.
Kintyre. And I've always kind of felt, well, is this the reason to my ears, it has this British folk feel? Is that Denny Lane's main contribution? I don't know. I just wanted to ask you your feeling on it because you're much closer to Denny Lane's work than I am.
Well, it was five co-writes on the album plus McIntyre, so that's six, which is remarkable, really. I mean, that's getting on for half of the numbers. But he only sings lead on two of them. But having said that, of the others, Don't Let It Bring Me Down is very folky as well. Um, Mull of Kintyre is folky, so maybe it was just both of them were just into the. I think you said earlier that McCartney wasn't trying too hard on this album, and I think that's spot on. I think he was just relaxing and just enjoying the success of on the wave of the big tour, being out in the on the ocean and just recording whatever came to mind, and not trying to have hits necessarily, or trying to be punky as he would try on Back to the Egg. Just having a good time and doing what came naturally to him. Um, I'm just reminded of my friend David Jenner when I reviewed London Town all those years ago. He wrote a very upsetting comment for me at the time. This is puerile music fit for 14-year-olds. I remember receiving this message, and I was at Heathrow Airport, and I was very upset. But since then, he's apologized, and we're okay. But it's funny he said that because I was 14 when I bought it, so maybe he's right.
I must have been when I bought, I was probably in my early 20s by the time I got it. And I liked it. I mean, I knew what to expect from McCartney, and I wasn't expecting the Talking Heads or Blondie at their height, with this album. And
Yeah,
there's something to be said for those of us who pick up albums well after they were hits in their day, and it sometimes hits us differently. So, um, this is one that I liked, and I think that McCartney knew he had another number one song on his hands within this album. So I think maybe that's why he knew he had, and I'm referring to with a little luck, which we can talk about in a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
But let's start with the track listing because he comes off pretty strong here with the title track, London Town.
Yeah, I mean, I just love the melody of this song. Uh, I think the words are pretty moving. I think the video sucks. I think he missed an opportunity. He could have filmed it anywhere in London, on the river, by the Parliament, whatever, by Tower Bridge, but he didn't. He chose to do this sort of fake street with Michael Lindsay Hogg directing, and it doesn't work. Although I'll watch it because I enjoy the song, but that was a shame. But great harmonies from Paul, Linda, and Denny. Um, oh, where are there places to go? Someone somewhere has to know. I just love that line,
Hmm.
um, and the melody, and the guitar playing from Jimmy in the middle as well.
Hmm.
So
Well, I think that the album cover, I think this is a very good album cover.
yeah,
And the photography is pretty good. I mean, it's pieced together, but this is one of the few albums of McCartney that it really, I think, explains what you're going to get inside the record.
yeah, I would say the front cover is good. The back cover leaves a bit to be desired because it is so obviously photoshopped, isn't it?
Well, the back cover, I think, I don't
I
know
like the
what.
concept.
Well, I like the fact that the back is in color, the front is in black and white, which kind
Yeah.
of, the rain that is falling down. He's singing about the front cover fits that song. This back cover, I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, Linda took these photos. This is about as bad of a photo of Linda as I've ever seen. What they did a
Well,
better job on was the poster, actually.
yeah, but Matt, before you come to that, I don't know if because I've noticed the McCartney lyrics book, which I don't have. My friend Madeline has it, so I looked at her copy, and that has that back cover picture of Paul in the book, the original
Hmm.
picture, and the picture that Paul put out when Denny died with his tribute. is the practically a mirror image of the Denny picture that you see on the back, and it's actually
Mm.
a good photo.
Yeah,
With the
Denny looks good on this photo, I think.
yeah,
The
yeah, I
Paul and
mean the
Linda
picture of
pictures
Linda
are
is
not the
not.
best.
No, the Linda one could be smiling, but she isn't. But
Yeah.
it was all taken in the Virgin Islands, so obviously it's not taken in London.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's fairly small criticism because I grew up with that cover, so I'm not going to dish it too much.
Well, they make up for it on the poster. As bad as Paul and Linda look on the back cover, they look great on the poster, and it's really a nice photograph, and it's poster worthy. So I can
Yeah,
put a copy that I rather than unfolding this. I guess I
yeah,
could
yeah,
do it since I'm talking. Here
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, and that picture was used originally on the Kintyre picture sleeve.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgotten about that. I had
So
seen it
that's the
before.
Kintyre in the background there, and so that came out in November, so about 5 months before the album. But the same photo, as you can see, yeah, I had that photo on my wall, as did a number of friends of mine, and it was double-sided. So if you wanted to change, you just flip it over.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, London Town, I think, is one of his better kind of deep cuts that he's done. And like I said earlier, it does harken back to something more kind of peppery, doesn't it? Maybe
Yeah,
because it's he's talking about London and he certainly can speak to that. Unlike some of the other fictional characters he creates, it's like, well, where are you getting this? But the London Town song seems pretty clear.
yeah. I mean, they tried releasing it as a single, but that was like 4 months after the album had already come out, so all the fans already had it. So I don't think it was destined to be a hit. But it's a big fan favorite. In fact, that's why Paul put it out because he got inundated with letters from fans saying, "I love
Hmm.
the song." Not sure why the fans would want it released as a single if it was already on the album.
Hmm.
Um, but you know, it's funny because I don't think Paul's, apart from "I've Had Enough," I don't think he's played any of these songs in concert ever. I mean, I know he was rehearsing with Little Luck for the Japan tour, um, but that never came about. Obviously, I don't think he played with a Little Luck on the Back to the Egg tour. He played "I've Had Enough." So that's interesting. It's this kind of album is unspoilt by being played to death by McCartney, like some of his other songs,
That's very true.
which is a point in its favor.
I agree. So next song, Cafe on the Left Bank. To me, I think it's a pretty good rock song, but not one of the best on this album. I really like the entire, almost all of side one. I think is pretty good, and one of his better sides in his whole catalog. I think.
Yeah, I don't know if you know the story behind this song, but this was referring to the trip that John and Paul made to Paris when they hung out on the Seine, drinking in bars, drinking cheap wine, ordinary wine, which sounds like a poor lyric, but if you think about it, the French for ordinary wine is vin ordinaire, which doesn't sound half so cheap as it does in English.
Hmm.
And drinking German beer is quite clever because German beer was just coming in around that time, being drunken in Europe a lot. The imported stuff, Heineken and no, sorry, Heineken's Dutch, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Uh, and yeah, great bass line from Paul. And apparently, when they recorded this song, they decked out the whole studio in as a kind of French cafe, which
Mm,
was quite interesting.
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, the next song has always been another favorite of mine. I'm Carrying. I think this is McCartney. Sometimes he just when he nails it, and he does with this song. And good lyric, and it's not overproduced, and it just seems to be one of those songs he knocked off.
Yeah, I mean, this is literally the song that you can imagine him sitting on the deck of the ship, looking at the ocean with the flying fish. And if you listen to the demo, I'm not sure if you can hear it on the finished version, but there's a kind of unadorned version out there on the internet where you can listen to it with the squeaks on the guitar, which I don't think he bothered to remove from the recording because it sounded so natural.
Mhm.
I forget what the term is for these squeaks. I'm
Mm.
not being a guitarist myself, but he could have removed those. And I love the fact that he put strings on the end on the last verse. I think that's just gorgeous.
Hmm.
Big favorite of mine. I think when I did my McCartney songs ranked, this was very high on the list.
Hmm.
And happy to say that George Harrison thought it was sensational as well, which is rare praise from him.
Yes, very rare. He doesn't praise McCartney too often, so that he must have really liked it. So yeah, that's another. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay, we move on to Backwards Traveler slash Cufflink, and those songs are joined. And I've always liked both of these songs. Backwards Traveler, both songs to me are good enough. They could have been enhanced and expanded into like full songs. I think the Cufflink song, the groove that they come up with is excellent. It's one of the best grooves I've ever heard them do. And I was always a little bit, felt a little bit bad that he didn't work, expand these songs more, and maybe a couple of the other songs of the album maybe could have been reduced a little bit or removed altogether.
Well, it's kind of reminiscent a bit of something like The Pound is Sinking. So it's like a couple of songs thrown together, and yeah, could have been lasted longer. I was always a bit annoyed by the rhyme. I am the backwards traveler, ancient wool unraveler. I thought that was a bit forced. And all this thing about wailing on the moon. I mean, what the hell is he talking about? But I thought it was quite fun. He sings it well. It's just not my favorite on the album, but I like Cufflink. Yeah, I think they get a good groove on that.
Mhm. Well, the next song, Children, Children's a Denny Lane collaboration. And this is one of those that have the kind of British folk feel that pervades the entire album. And I've always liked this one too. This is not, it's not anything incredibly great, but it just helps hold the album together well.
Yeah, I mean, it fits right in with the mood, doesn't it? I
Hmm.
know a tiny waterfall, a magic little place where we can play together and watch the fishes race. And I love McCartney's backing vocals, when Denny goes, children, children, and McCartney's going, children, children.
Hmm.
He's kind of sort of imitating a bass on with his vocal. I think it's very effective.
Hmm.
Um, Love it. Yeah, a lot of some people like Sam Wiles, the Paul or Nothing podcaster, loathes this song.
Oh, does he?
So
Okay.
that
Well,
forces.
he would be one to ask about this British feel that I'm hearing in this album. Maybe it's something he doesn't appreciate.
Yeah, Danny was going to call this song Lane and Heidi, which is the name of his kids. So it's going to be Lane and Heidi, where are you? And McCartney said, nope, that's too sentimental.
Mm.
So
Well, there are plenty of McCartney songs to loathe for various reasons, and this one doesn't get under my skin like some of the other ones. But what do you think of the next song, Girlfriend?
Well, I've got a confession to make. When I first listened to this album, I thought it was Linda singing the lead. That's how naive and stupid I was. I think it's a pleasant song. I know Michael Jackson did a version of it, but he criminally left out the middle eight, which is about the best bit of the
Hmm.
of the song. I think there's nice chord changes. Yes, it is. It's soft rock or whatever you want to call it. It's commercial. It could have been a single, I guess. I just like the feel. Again, it just fits perfectly in with the mood of the album, doesn't it?
I think it does. The backing vocals is I think I was hearing a little too much Linda on that. And that's to me which didn't give make the song better, it made it worse. And I thought the song was twice as long as it needed to be. So for me, this song isn't though it does it the general um, theme or the general feel does make it fit in, but this is one of the songs I would consider a throwaway.
So you thought we were back to Ram with Linda's vocals being too high in the mix.
Or in the mix at all. I mean, yeah, I just don't understand why any major artist would insist upon foisting his wife upon us, who really is not a good singer or a good player. But she has her moments. I'll give her that, but they're
Yeah, I mean
few and far between.
on the title track and Cafe on the Left Bank, when you've got Paul and Linda singing together, and with Denny, they do create this unique Wings sound or Live and Let Die. The this numerous examples. But I think if she's left a little bit too isolated or a bit too high in the mix, they could have easily Paul could have mimicked her line as well, or
Mhm.
replaced it or something. I'm not
Yeah, I
sure.
agree with you. I think, background singers, there's some excellent background singers out there that just never, they're just not good enough to be lead singers, but that's okay because they excel at background singing. And it's not easy to be a background singer. So the thing about Linda is it took her a while. I mean, it must have been very hard for her to be thrust into in front of a microphone. And it took her a long time to get better. And she did improve. And I think you have to produce her in a certain way. And sometimes McCartney does a great job of it. And sometimes maybe not so much.
Hey, by the way, I was reading I don't know if you've read the Ken Sharp book, Recording of Double Fantasy. He was talking about the backing vocalists on recording Woman,
Mm, mm,
and they couldn't stay in tune apparently, and
mm,
so Jack Douglas deleted them one by one. They ended up with some guy is singing backing vocal with John on that song. I forget his
mm,
name. So if you listen to that, it's not actually women singing the backing. It's a guy whose name I've forgotten. But that was an
mhm.
interesting story, I thought.
Well, I've been critical of Paul's inclusion of Linda on his solo work. And just so people know, I am a big fan of backing vocals and how they are arranged. And a lot of the 60s groups I will feature, I put great focus on vocal arrangements and singing harmony. So it's not something that I do not pay attention to. I'm critical of it because I love it so much. And we hear a song here coming up soon where I think McCartney nails it. The backing vocals are incredibly good. But before we get there, we have another rocker in I've Had Enough. I like this song. I think as far as the rockers on this album go, this is maybe the strongest one for me.
Yeah, it is the strongest one. It's slightly incongruous compared to the rest of the album, to be honest. It doesn't quite fit in, but my mate Andy Brooks is going to kill me if I say anything negative about it. So it's,
Well, he released it as a single, and I think, when it comes to McCartney or any of the solo Beatles, if they have one big hit on an album, the next two singles are just kind of support for the album. I don't expect those to be hits either. But this song hit, let's see now, 25 in the States, 42 in the UK. I mean, that's a moderate hit.
well, a very disappointing performance in the UK. I remember this song coming out. I remember it being played. I remember some of my friends at school liked it, others didn't. It wasn't quite as unpopular as, say, Wonderful Christmas Time was a bit later on. But yeah, it's an okay rocker. I just can take it or leave it. I don't think it's particularly good words. I don't know what the hell he's talking about. It's sure as hell isn't autobiographical. I don't think. Um, I don't know. It's just looking for words to rhyme to make a song, I guess.
Yeah, I like the synth in the song. So I think and you said he played it live it's as well. So, I mean, that's interesting that one of the few songs from the selection that he played live.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, to play live? It's a kind of got a live groove to it.
Yeah.
Too young to go to the Wings tour, unfortunately. Um, Otherwise, I would have been there.
Well, that inside one, so side two opens with one song I think is one of his greatest singles, and that's With a Little Luck. And those great backing vocals I was referring to just briefly ago, I think he nails it with a little luck. And
Mm.
wasn't it Karen Tyler that said they were referring to the backing vocals that will convince a listener that perhaps John and George sang on the track in a bout of amnesia?
Yes, that was a great line, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, I think that's partly why I love this song so much is that it's very Beatley and the backing vocals are arranged in Beatles style. And if he could have had Lennon and Harrison singing backing vocals on this, that would have been quite a feat.
Yeah, I mean, I just love to have asked John what he thought of a song like this, because obviously it was all over US radio at the time. He would have heard it. He probably would have admired Paul for writing such a catchy song. I'm not sure whether it was his style of music so much as some of Paul's other stuff. I'm not sure, but that's one thing which we never got the chance to ask John. You got to go through all the Beatles tracks on the Playboy interview, but nobody ever asked him really about what he thinks of Paul and George and their records. It would have been very interesting.
Yeah, he was really not available interviewing at all during this time, so that's probably why we hadn't heard. I think With a Little Luck is among Paul's great singles, and coming off of Mull of Kintyre and Let 'Em In and Silly Love Songs, he was just on fire here. And I think this song is as good as any of those.
Yeah, yeah, and just reminds me, but when I met Yoko in '98, I tried to get her onto this topic about what did you and John make of Paul's solo music, and she goes, don't really know it. I said, what about Band on the Run? You know that surely? And she goes, no. I was quite shocked.
She probably doesn't listen to radio much. I mean, she doesn't strike me as putting on the AM band, and wriggling her hips to Casey and the Sunshine Band, but I don't know.
He does tell the story of her and John sitting in the kitchen one day at the Dakota, and one of the Paul songs or Wing songs comes on, and they're both kind of crying. And I don't think we've ever established which song it was. It could have been My Love. It could have been Warm and Beautiful. It could have been
It
anything.
could have been Cook of the House.
No, I doubt it was that.
Oh
That might
man,
have got them laughing
maybe so, maybe so.
hysterically on the floor.
Uh, or they hit too close to home. I don't know. Okay, speaking of hitting close to home, we've got the next song, Famous Groupies. And side two, I said earlier, I'm a big fan of side one, but side two to me is a disappointment after the song With a Little Luck. And Famous Groupies is one of the reasons why. And McCartney, obviously, he gets tagged for some of his poor lyrics. This is a good example of that. It's too bad. I mean, he's got some great lyrics as well, but the bad ones are so bad that they get mentioned. And rhyming groupies with paying with rupees, I thought was a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, and they're twin Snoopies.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you really have to try to write lyrics that bad. I think I don't know what he was attempting, but um, I don't know. I think he was just trying to. The groupie topic in the late 70s books started being written upon it on that topic. So maybe he was just saying, okay, maybe it's time I can give my little side of the story too through this song, but this does not work.
Yeah, I mean, it was never my favorite back in the day, but it's grown on me over the years. I think it's quite listenable, and certainly compared to the stuff he's put out in the last 20 years, I think it's decent. But yeah, in comparison to the rest of the album, not a highlight.
Yeah, this could have been the B side, and Girl School might have been better on here. Just a better song, I think, but
Yeah,
not
yeah.
that it fits in better, but I don't think Famous Groupies fits in real well with this whole London town feel that he concocted, whether he did that on purpose or not. But that's,
And what is he talking about at the end with all ladies and gentlemen in all their pulchritude and luminosity? I don't know. It's just weird.
yeah,
You
he
know,
he
that,
lost me at Rupees, so I couldn't really listen to the song much more seriously after that. I'd listen to it, but yeah, it's like let's get to the next song, which is "Deliver Your Children," another McCartney Lane collaboration.
yeah, again, just perfect for the mood of the album. Um, love the acoustic playing. I love McCartney's harmony vocal. I wish he'd do more of it, because not often in the post Beatles years did he get the sort of opportunity or be told to be second fiddle to someone's lead vocal. And this is a good example where it works really well, both in the verse and in the chorus. I think it's just a wonderful touch, and Denny's singing it well. And it's quite a simple song in terms of chord structure, not much more than A minor all the way through, but it works well.
Yeah, and I think that's why this whole album does work well is Denny Lane's contributions, and he's a little bit more of an equal on this album, and he contributes. They're not trying to just throw him a bone by giving him one song, but his contributions are even, and they're not. He's not given a big spotlight, but he's obviously his contributions are are sizable, and this is another one of them.
Yep.
So next song, Name and Address. I always thought this song, the beginning, it just reminded me of the early Beatles. Like I saw her standing there, and it's got that 50s rocker feeling. So I think McCartney, he's always game for doing a song like this.
Yeah, apparently may have been a tribute to Elvis, who died shortly before. Again, Karen Tyler, I think, was spot on when they said McCartney demonstrates the techniques of making an album almost to ridiculous lengths. He can go to any genre, as he does, from rock to folk to this, and he's a master of all of them. But the thing lacking, they argued, was the substance. And I think this song is not much of a song, but it's an enjoyable kind of rockabilly romp, if you like.
Mhm. Well, I think the this idea of having all these different styles, like you just mentioned, is has been a Beatle formula. If you want to even call it a formula, but that's how Beatle albums seem to be constructed because you had the three writers, so you got this diversity. And I think McCartney, as by himself, he struggles to pull that off. And I think that's one of the weaknesses in his game. And this album, I think you can't say that as much about this album as some of his other albums, which is why I think this album holds together well. But yeah, that song might be, I think it's a good song and it maybe doesn't fit in as well, but he's done some worse songs, of course. But this one, I think, and it also has a nice guitar solo too. So that I
Yeah.
guess would be Jimmy on that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It sounds a bit more like Paul, to be honest. I think this song was, if I'm right in saying, I think it was recorded after Jimmy had left back in London.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I think Linda's a bit too high on the mix in the chorus, if you want my love. Um, just a little bit jarring there, but minor criticism.
Hmm. Well, the next song is one of my favorites on the album. That's Don't Let It Bring You Down. And it's got it's a great deep cut. And I think the instrumentation is very good. And though it's more electric, it maintains that British folk feeling. And the guitar playing, the lead guitar reminds me of a guy named John Renbourn in a band called the Pentangle, in the late Pentangle material, like in the very early 70s. And that's a high compliment because Renbourn is just a great player. And I just think that this song is just constructed really well. It's got a great groove to it, and it's a little darker. It's not a typical sunshiny McCartney song. And I think this one is one of his better ones where it isn't sunshiny, and he just kind of nails it here.
Yeah, I mean, it's another McCartney Lane collaboration, so it would be interesting to know who wrote what, who came up with the. I guess if Paul's
True.
singing lead, he might have come up with the first bit, and then Danny helped him on the lyrics, I would guess. But gorgeous song, gorgeous use of instruments, as you say, with the flutes and the or whatever instrument it is doing the whistle bit.
Hmm. Recorders, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think that Don't Let It Bring You Down would have been a much more proper song to create as the album closer. And I think it's a much more worthy song. But we get Morse Moose and the Gray Goose as the closing track, which I think is kind of is a very big letdown to close what I feel is a very solid and a fine album. What is your feeling on a good old Morse Moose here?
I beg to differ. I think it's quite an atmospheric closer because it's got that nautical feel to it. So it ties in with the Virgin Islands sessions. Crank it up loud when the bass line that bass line riff going all the way through it is brilliant. Joe English coming in on the drums,
Mhm.
and then the chords on the piano. It's quite easy to play. I've got the sheet music here, so I can
Hmm.
do the chords.
Well, let's talk
But,
about the piano because Linda is credited with keyboards on this song, and there's a couple keyboards on it. There's an acoustic piano and electric piano, and who's ever playing it is really good. So if that's her playing, I got to give her credit for that because I think that's the standout instrument on this track.
well,
The
they
thing,
don't. The album doesn't tell you who plays what on which track. It credits Paul McCartney playing piano and keyboards, Linda playing piano and keyboards, and Danny as well. So and it could mean any one of those three. if you're saying it's that good, I doubt it. With due respect, I probably think it was Paul or maybe Denny.
Maybe so. Yeah, I think I was looking at another listing which had her credited with keyboards on it, but I don't know, which keyboards, and hers could be buried in the mix for all I know. But that to me, instrumentally was the highlight of that track. But I think he loses his way with this track. Again, the lyrics are questionable. And I think, is this a disco song? Is it a prog song? I don't think McCartney even knows. But I just, this is one that I would have not, I don't, he must have thought highly of it because it closes the album. What I would have probably done is maybe had Mull of Kintyre as the opening track on side two, and close with a little luck, because that's a long song. It's 5 minutes 45 seconds. It's got a great close. I think that would have done it well. Morris Moose and the Grey Goose, 6.5 minutes. I think it just goes on too long. And McCartney, as he has seen it, we've seen in the past, he has trouble closing out some of his longer songs.
Okay, well, you're entitled to your opinion, Matt. That's fine. Um, I, I find it quite exciting. I think it's a bit similar. I think Paul made the comment about Old Siam Sir from Back to the Egg, saying it's more of a groove than the lyrics are not particularly special, and I think that that would be the case with this. But on the other hand, they're in the middle of the ocean. They're calling down the way down at the bottom of the sea. Tell me, are you receiving me? I mean, can you imagine being on the boat and having had a smoke or something and listening to those lyrics? They would sound pretty good.
I hadn't thought of it that way. But if you're going to talk about groove, I would say Cufflink has got a far superior groove that's worth grooving on than anything in Morse Moose. And I don't understand this obsession with animals, moose, goose, all these polar bears, and he's got this obsession with animals. And this again gives him this harms his street cred because it does sound like he's writing for children. Your friend had said that the 14-year-old quip about this album. And I think McCartney opens himself up to that with some of these lyrics, and this song is a good example of that.
I don't know. As we flow over the stormy sea, Davy Jones was calling me. We're heading for tranquility, but the great goose flew away. I love it.
Well, I
I
mean,
cannot
it's
think of, I cannot think of another way to close the album, to be honest. I mean, you talk about with a little luck. That's the perfect side two opener. I
well,
personally wouldn't drop anything from this album because it's too close to me. It's a bit like saying drop something from Sergeant Pepper and put Strawberry Fields on. I don't think
mm,
that should have been done either. So
yeah, I can sympathize with that feeling if you grew up with this album as a whole. But since I didn't, I think that adding Mull of Kintyre to this album makes the album much stronger. And well, what would have to go away? And I think that 6 minutes and 27 seconds of Morris Moose would be my vote. And I think Mull of Kintyre is a great side two opener, and what he put as the closer, you wouldn't have to have with a little luck. Although I think that totally works. But that's me trying to make a case for a stronger album. And I think this would be a stronger album with Mull of Kintyre. And there are a couple contenders that I would probably drop.
do you not think it would have been weird to have a Scottish folk song on an album called London Town? It just wouldn't fit, I don't think.
Not for Americans.
Not even for me. I'm happy for it to have been a standalone
I
single. It
mean,
is the kind of single, Matt, that as soon as this time of year comes around, people play it on the radio in the UK. They were even playing it at half time, my son was saying, in one of the soccer matches here on at the weekend. Um, and the video is very Christmassy.
hmm.
You've checked out the video of them with the bagpipes, presumably.
I have not actually. I have not seen
You
that
haven't?
one. I'll have to check that out.
Well, yeah, you should check that out. I just want to show you my Japanese copy of London Town, which is
Ah,
me and Jack there, which is quite interesting.
hmm.
Um, and that comes with, as all the Japanese albums, it comes with the Japanese lyrics. Should you need those? In fact, I don't think even this one doesn't even come. Oh, the English lyrics are on the printed sleeve, of course, but it comes with the poster. And then this is quite interesting. This is my Argentinian copy.
That is cool.
Ciudad de Londres,
City of London.
Spanish.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think I'm right in saying that's Spanish. Yeah,
That
I
is
did get the
correct. Yeah.
country right. Yeah, if it was Brazil, it would be Portuguese, but Argentina's Spanish. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. So I've got, I think at the last count, I had nine or 10 copies of this album.
Wow.
So if ever I see a new version, which I haven't got from another country, for example, I won't get another French copy because I already have one, and I have an Italian copy, and I have a Spanish copy, I have a US copy, I've got a Canadian copy, UK, Japanese, Greek. Uh, Still after the Indian, I don't think I've got an Indian copy. So there's a few countries I'm still on the lookout.
Hmm. I just got the one album. I bought this used for $4.98, and it served me well. So I've just got the one copy. I don't collect too much of the solo stuff. I've got just the domestic copies typically. And
But
and
it did come with the poster and the lyric sheet, right?
yeah, I do have that. And my copy still, though I bought it used, did still have the poster in it. So whoever bought that originally didn't use it. There's no tape marks on the back or anything. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that one thing I advise anyone if you're looking for a copy of London Town, just make sure it comes with the poster and the lyric sheet. It's
Hmm.
nothing more annoying than getting it home and finding you haven't got the full works.
Yeah, and you can save yourself buying the McCartney lyric book and just get you the albums. There are a lot of the lyrics are on the inner sleeve. Who needs the book?
Yeah, yeah, and save yourself buying the coloured vinyl latest edition of McCartney 3 or whatever it is.
Well, yeah, he's offering that up, and I think the London Town, along with Back to the Egg, are two of the archival releases that have yet to be released, and people have been waiting for these for years. And I don't collect those. So, what is the feeling from somebody like yourself who would probably buy the box set of London Town, the anniversary set, if it were to ever be released?
Well, I've just got fed up with the prices of these things. You know, when Band on the Run box came out in 2010 or whenever it was £30. It was something totally reasonable. Now you're lucky to get anything less than 150 quid. I mean, it's just I don't know what's happened, and I know inflation. You have to take inflation into account, but I so actually I don't have many of the box sets of the archive. You know, I have the double vinyl. I think I have all of the double vinyls. But the box sets, I've got Speed of Sound, Venus and Mars, and Band on the Run, and that's it. Um,
Mhm.
but you're right. With London Town, I'm going to be very tempted to buy it just because it's a special place for me. But you know, we could be waiting. I was going to say waiting till Christmas, but a bit longer than that. We're going to have to be waiting till next Christmas or 3 Christmases from now. The way things are going.
I've heard that McCartney wasn't fond of Back to the Egg. Is he not? Does he have a problem with London Town? I mean, why would you release, for example, Wildlife and some huge box set with a book and all that over any other album? Arguably his worst album got the special Cadillac treatment. Why not these two? Does he not like them? I don't understand.
Well, in the Wingspan book, he describes this period as a happy period. So you know, and he was good times with Linda. Okay, the band were about to split up, and maybe there's complications surrounding the songwriting royalties with 5 compositions, but I'm sure they can overcome that. He was probably hurt by the criticism of it at the time, and that's what made him try to get rockier with Back to the Egg, and then he was stung by the criticism of that. So, in some ways, this period is unhappy for him because he was getting
Mhm.
slagged off by the critics, but not by the fans. Not by the
No, the fans have always supported him. And I think McCartney's made a bad habit of trying to play to the critics. And very good critics know when they're being played to. That's another reason why he's been, as you say, slagged off by the critics. It's not just because he was labeled breaker up of the Beatles, is he tries to play to them. And I think that's a little bit critics, the good ones, can pick up on that and they don't like it.
yeah.
We touched on it earlier. I think McCartney, along with other contemporaries like George Harrison or Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, they all started creating music that was a little softer. We're coming out of the singer-songwriter period. Those guys started to not have hits in the second half of the 70s because you've got punk, you've got the new wave, you've got the disco. There's a lot to compete with here. So McCartney wasn't alone in a little dip in perhaps popularity because, being in a more creating more what I would call adult contemporary music and or what some people were calling at the time as soft rock. And obviously you had the heavy metal and you had the AC/DC types. That stuff was also competing with McCartney. So there's so much going on. And like you say, the important thing, I mean, these sold in the millions. So he had an audience and a sizable audience. So I think that's something that's important as well.
Yeah, as you say, he's never going to catch up with Blondie and Talking Heads and Sex Pistols. If that's what you want to listen to, then go listen to that. But I was listening to both actually at the
Mhm.
time, or maybe not the Pistols, but certainly a big fan of Blondie. And then later on got into the Talking Heads, and I didn't mind them sitting side to side in my record collection next to Wings. No problem with that at all.
Yeah, it's like different moods, different musical moods, and McCartney certainly filled a mood. And the Talking Heads did another move. I think the ultimate thing that we can do to really reevaluate all these years later is that do these older albums still hold up? And I think this album holds up pretty well, better than some of his other ones. Some stuff being of its time does sound dated and seems to be following trends. Obviously, Blondie to me and Talking Heads they just do not sound dated at all. I mean, still sounds pretty fresh to me, particularly the heads. But I think that ultimately that's what we try to judge. Does this stand the test of time? Does it hold up today? So, and some of McCartney's stuff doesn't, some of it doesn't.
Well, I don't know, but McCartney probably thinks that there's no reason to release this because nobody wants to hear it, or I don't know what's going on in his head these days. That
Why
the
would
fact that he
why would he
wants to
think
a
why would he think
third,
people want to hear Wildlife?
or worse than that, Matt, a 3-year anniversary edition of McCartney 3. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, I mean, I don't know I mean, this guy seems to be losing his equilibrium a little bit here with understanding what his fans want. I don't think he fully understands his fans. All I hear is, I want the Back to the Egg box set and I want the London Town box set first and foremost. Then we can deal with that other stuff later. And they've been saying this for years. I mean, that's seems to me somebody who's tone deaf with regard to what his fans are asking for.
well, I think can probably swing it for us is Mary and Stella because they were young, I don't know, 10, between the age of 7 and 10 or whatever, or Heather a bit older. So they remember this period with fondness, presumably. So why don't they say, Dad, put it out, put London Town out, God's sake. Um, or maybe they just don't get involved in that side of things. And I don't want to
Mhm.
make excuses for Paul saying it's Universal making these decisions.
Yeah, I think I do hear a lot of people making excuses for Paul saying, "Oh, it's his people." That's not Paul. But I would argue that nothing gets past anything without McCartney's approval. That's my take. I could be wrong about that, but and I shudder to think what the next generation, how people are going to handle the catalog of the Beatles once they're all gone. That's a video topic in itself. I wouldn't mind making a few predictions, but um,
What you mean
I
with the
have
use of AI and all that? Yeah.
no, not AI, just how to continue to curate their father's legacy. So you've got Beatles stuff to deal with, but you got the solo stuff as well. It'll be interesting to see how they handle it. I have no idea. I mean, will there even be any market for it, in the next 20 years? I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, how many times have they remixed Bach or Beethoven or Mozart? I mean, there comes a time where you just have to let the music do the talking and forget all these endless reinventions, so-called reinventions. I
Well,
mean,
yeah, the difference between the older classical Bach and Beethoven's is that there are no recordings. So it's just music that was written that was performed. And in the pop world, 20th century music, it has more to do with the original artist who recorded it. So I don't know where it's going to go after this. I really don't know.
But you yourself have said you're pretty fed up with all these endless remixes, aren't you?
Yeah, it's well, where the Beatles are concerned, I mean, I do some of them are okay, but generally they're starting to just be very confusing. And what's to stop them from remixing Sergeant Pepper again once the technology gets better? You know, at the end of the day, I would just say we don't need any remixing. We've got great originals, we've got damn near perfection, and there's no need to really tweak it. And I think that, as I said in one of my videos recently, people don't listen to the song because of the mix. They listen to the song because it's a good song. That's why Beethoven and Bach, that's incredibly beautiful music, no matter who's playing it. So that's why it stood the test of time. And there's a lot of Bach and Beethoven that we don't hear. They have lesser works too. They've got clunkers just like the rest of the
Yeah.
musicians we grew up. So I mean it's we'll see how. I think there's you could overdo it that people are just going to lose interest. I mean, you muddy the waters too much.
Well, with some of the comments about the recent remixes saying they make the 2009 remaster sound like terrible. I forget which word they used, and you thought, well, if you think 2009 is bad, then what was it like for the original fans who bought the album the day it came out? Would they get back home and think, oh God, this mix is terrible. I can't hear the bass. Or were they just grooving to the bloody song? I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah, I
just
mean, again, I don't listen to music with an audiophile ear. I guess I could develop one, but I just don't care to. I listen to music more in an ambient room, and I'm usually doing things while I'm listening to music. That's how I've typically done it. I do occasionally listen with headphones, and the Beatles are really the only band that I really pay close attention to. So I do hear some changes and some things that are different in these mixes, and sometimes I don't like them, sometimes I like them. But again, I think this whole fetish of remixing that Apple seems to be concerned with and obsessed with, I think is just that. I don't think they're serving the Beatles' legacy really at all. And if they are doing anything, it's to cater to what they are calling what the current population is asking for. And that may be true, but I don't know. I'm I've been able to get by with the original mixes just fine for 50 years. So um, I think most people have.
yeah.
And
Do you remember
I
that
mhm.
hilarious interview with John Lennon in 1974 on one of the US New York radio stations? And he's talking about the red and the blue. And he was talking about the song Revolution, complaining it. That was a heavy record. And they turned it into a piece of ice cream.
Yeah, I thought he overstated that. I don't think the blue version is that different than the single, but you know, he's so close to it, it would matter to him. And he
Well, I
wasn't
guess what
involved
he's
in.
saying is he prefers mono on that song because it's a
Yep,
rock. You don't
yep,
want the separation. You just want the sound in the middle, which
yeah. And I
for a
think
song like
I think he's got a
Revolution,
good point on that song as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Beatles themselves, with regard to these remixes of the Red and Blue album, I just do not believe that the three or the four entities that make up the head of Apple, McCartney, Starkey, and Lennon and Harrison's estates, actually sat through every song with headphones and so taking notes and say, well, let's change this, let's change that. And then to have consensus with the other three entities, I don't think that's how it happened. I think they had a deadline, they had to get it out. I just don't think they care that much. Let's get this out. You know, if it's going to make us some more money, great. I just don't think that much scrutiny was given to this.
I think
It shows.
they probably just trusted Giles. Said, do what you want. We trust you. Uh, they maybe they're regretting it. Maybe they don't care either way. I'm not
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
know,
buying it, so I don't mind. I'll listen to it on Spotify and then I'll go back to the original if I don't like the remix.
yeah, I
Simple as
think Giles Martin, boy, I'd hate to be Giles Martin because everything you do, just people complain about it. And the complainers are usually louder than the admirers. And there's been some question now, is Giles Martin even the right guy to be doing this? I think that's a very good question. And the thing that's it's being compared to is the Yellow Submarine song track. I don't even, I should know that guy's name who did that. I'll have to put it up
Yeah,
on the
I
screen.
can't remember. That was
But
a
I
good.
mean, that seems to be somebody who really had a better feel, or maybe had, I don't know what the directions were, but I, it seems like there's a good way to do it and maybe an inconsistent way to do it. Maybe Giles Martin and Sam O'Kell, there's only so much they can do in a given period. They got deadlines. That's all. I mean, I'm not blaming them because I don't know the situation. Because like all this stuff, there are deadlines and there's Christmas markets and my information tells me that Rubber Soul was supposed to come out in 2023 and they changed gears. And if that's true, I think that the rushedness of the project shows.
I just can't believe he left out two guitar licks from Old Brown Shoe at the beginning of the second verse. They're just
Yeah,
inaudible.
I had forgotten to mention that in my video. Yeah, there are things that are quieter, and particularly the stereo version that we are used to hearing some of the guitar feedback in Tomorrow Never Knows, which was in the mono version it's gone. In the original mono version it's gone. That's why I always preferred the stereo. But in this new remix, it's quieter, and I think that's one of the best pieces of that whole instrumental passage, and they took it away from me to some extent. So those are the things we as fans, we get so used to those that you take it away from us, you're gonna hear some squawking.
But they used the same mix for Tomorrow Never Knows as they'd done for the recent Revolver box, didn't they? They didn't remix it again, I don't think.
No, they did not.
So you're talking
That's the
about
one
the
I was referring to. Yeah,
Revolver. Yeah,
that's would have been the 2022 version. Yeah, see, I mean, it's hard to keep track of all these
yeah.
remixes now, and it's
I thought they did a decent job on some of the Rubber Soul stuff. I mean, to be honest with you, I haven't really listened to it on a 5.1 surround sound system. My son says on headphones it sounds incredible. Even on a JBL, if I needed someone, sounds amazing. Um,
yeah,
so he's done a good job on some of the red. I just don't know about the blue so much.
yeah. Well, again, the blue
Giles.
mostly from Revolver to the end of the Beatles' career. I mean, does any of that need remixing? I mean, yeah, there's improvements you could make. There's some of the separation I do like, but it's not like the early stuff where it's more, the pan left, the hard pan right vocals, it's really not, you don't have that problem. So what are you doing? What is the directive? What is the initiative? What is the plan? What are you trying to do with this? I don't know. I mean, the end of I Am the Walrus is a perfect example of, well, he probably, Giles Martin went his own direction. They said, yeah, that's good. Let's go with that. I don't think there was much thought given to it, but the fans are not liking it too much,
Well, I
or
mean,
some like it.
it reminds me of Let It Be Naked. When that came out, everyone was raving about it, saying, yes, this is great without the strings. And then within a few months, guess what? Everyone had gone back to the original album. Well, not
That's a
everyone.
Yeah,
I
that's a
did.
good point. Let It Be Naked is that's just a forgotten project.
Yeah.
Had they waited on that, that could have been something what could have been added to the Let It Be box set. And what separates that 12 years, 15 years right in there.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of rendered useless at some point. I mean, it's not like Let It Be Naked isn't heavily edited because it is. And
Yeah, he's taken a lot of the Spectre mixes. Like I've got a feeling is basically Spectre's mix. Two of us is the same. But
mhm,
what he's done, or whoever I forgot maybe who did it. So we'll blame Paul.
mhm,
He's stripped it of all the personality of the original record by getting rid of those little jokey bits in between the songs.
mhm.
And even Dig It and Maggie May, they add flavor to the album. And it's hilarious to hear John saying that was Can You Dig It by Georgie Wood. Now he'd like to play Hark the Angels Come, sort of taking a piss out of Let It Be, which probably
Yeah.
angered Paul, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't think it anchored Paul. I think, well, did that part get removed from the Let It Be Naked? I guess it did.
Yeah, because they
Um,
removed Dig It. And then to follow up the song about Let It Be about his mother with a song about a prostitute, again, you could say that was going to piss off Paul. The
Yeah, I
Magnet.
suppose. I mean, Let It Be is a bit of a mess in many ways, I suppose, and I can't wait to do my review on that album at some point in the near future here. I'll address some of that because I mean, even though I think Spector overall, I think he did a pretty good job, and playing Monday morning quarterback here, I could take Spector's job and do a better job, but that's with hindsight. Any of us could do that. But it's just one of those things that the more you tinker with it in later decades, like Let It Be Naked, I don't know that that's a good idea.
Did you get? Did you personally, Matt Williamson, get annoyed with the strings and the choir on Long and Winding Road?
When I was a kid and heard it for the first time, it did not annoy me. And as I became a teenager and into my early 20s, college area, and I started to be getting more into music, it still didn't bother me, although I could recognize that the string arrangement was a little bit over the top. Schmaltzy is what I would call it. And it didn't bother me that much. There's not many Beatles songs that have obviously Good Night on the White Album was intentionally schmaltzy and intentionally over the top. And I don't know what, and one thing about Long and Winding Road, Paul McCartney was given the option to make changes to that. And all he asked, his only change to that was to turn the strings down a bit. He probably could have had them removed, and he didn't. So anyway, I think it's okay. I think it fits the song. I don't think it's one of their strongest songs anyway. I mean, I think Let It Be is a far superior song. Some people absolutely love The Long and Winding Road. I had a friend who that was her favorite Beatles song. And so I understand that people are close to that song. And I
Yeah,
think
I mean,
part of the reason that they're close to it because of the string arrangement.
yeah, okay, it is schmaltzy, but I like schmaltzy stuff, and it was a number one single in the US. And I think if you'd put it out naked, I'm not at all sure it would have been a number one single.
No, I think you're right. It would not have been number one. And it wasn't released as a single in the UK, was it?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, he was kind of, I call it maybe the son of yesterday, McCartney ballad, lush strings. And again, the Beatles had broken up. So that song maybe had a little bit of extra meaning, a la Now and Then, you know.
Well,
So
no, come on, don't bracket it in.
forgive me, but I'm talking about the nostalgia aspect. The Beatles had just
Well,
broken up, and that was already news. And then Long and Winding Road gets released as a single. There's a little bit of a tie-in with the lyric,
yeah, melancholy and this kind
"End of
of
the
long
Road."
road which never quite leads to your door. You're always struggling to find what you're looking for, or to quote you two, or whatever. So, uh, gorgeous lyric, sentimental as hell, but so was I Will, and that's one of my favorites as
Hmm.
well. Um,
Yeah, I think McCartney's in the Long and Winding Road. I think the melody is better than the lyric, is which is true with most of McCartney's work generally. And there's times when I think that the lyric bogs down a little bit, that he's stretching a little bit in the Long and Winding Road. But that's just to my ears now after so many years of listening to it. And if I want to critically give it a listen, that's kind of what I come up with. Still a great song. I still worthy of the number one position as well.
well, it just this brings me to a point which I've made before, I think, Matt. Imagine you're a non-English speaking person in some rural part of China listening to the Long and Winding Road. You won't have a clue what the hell he's singing about, but you would just think, what a beautiful song.
Well, if I were to imagine myself in China, I have bigger problems than the Long and Winding Road and what it meant, especially if it was in
Um,
a rural part of China.
yeah, yeah. Well, I made that point. Just no English lessons anywhere near. You don't speak a word. And my Hungarian uncle is like that. He doesn't speak a word of English, but he loves the Beatles.
Hmm.
And he'll just say to me, "This is a true Paul song," but he won't have a clue what Paul is singing about.
Well, I think that's a testament to how good the music is when you have non-English speaking people who really love it.
Yeah,
And the Beatles did have hits worldwide to non-English speaking countries. And I just have to believe that the melodies were just so strong that people just, I think the lyrics have always been a bonus for Beatle fans, but I think they're always secondary to the melody.
Always.
Almost always. Yeah, I mean the Beatles' worldwide appeal has to do with the song construction more so than the lyrics, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're proved right by the fact that Bob Dylan is not particularly popular here in Hungary or probably in rural parts of China, despite the fact his lyrics are better than anything on this earth. So
Oh, and Dylan's not popular in Hungary? Oh, I thought that the Europeans
not
appreciated
really.
all that
They just
intellectual
don't.
stuff so much more than us dumb Americans.
Well, they just don't understand what he's talking about, Matt. So they don't even get that far. They just hear the voice. They don't particularly like the voice, and that just puts them off. They're not willing to delve any deeper into the,
Mhm.
Joker Man or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes.
Yeah, Dylan, I struggle with some of the meaning of his songs. There are people, and this is another video topic, but there are people that are just lyric people when it comes to music. I'm not one of them. I appreciate lyrics, but it's secondary for me, which is why I'm not as big of a Dylan fan as other people. The people that I know love Dylan, they are lyrics first people, and the songs judge based on the lyrics. I think Dylan has actually written some very good melodies as well, and some good rock songs, and he's got quite a variety of stuff going on, but not nothing on the variety scale of the Beatles, of course. But
Yeah,
yeah, I can see why non-English speaking people wouldn't get Dylan.
yeah. Well, I tried to turn you on to Street Legal the other day. You quite liked it, did you?
I did, that gospel feel. Yeah, that's something that I thought it was very musical. His later '70s stuff has has more musicality to it, so I think that's maybe why I I like it. I mean, I can listen to Tangled Up in Blue all day long, love it. His blood on the tracks and that whole era that he started. So yeah, I mean, I'm not quite ready to do my Dylan series yet, but I'm gonna get there.
Okay, great. I just want to mention the label of the record just quickly because this is the sheet music, and
Mm, hmm
this has. I wish these were real record labels, but they're not. So that was interesting. Side one, black and white, mimicking the front cover of the album, obviously, and then side two with the sunshine, of course.
mm, hmm
So I like the fact that they did that, mimicking the cover. It was a nice touch.
Yeah, and this was a time period, after Apple had kind of went away. The solo Beatles did some cool stuff with the record labels, like Ringo, and in this case on London Tie. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and just come to think about it, Back to the Egg was similar concept, sunny side up and over easy.
Hmm
Not quite the same, but you know what I mean.
Well, that would be a phrase we would use for the next album, right? Over easy.
Back to the Egg, yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right, so how do you rank this album in the end? I mean, in any way of ranking system that you choose.
I mean, I don't know. You're asking me to be objective, I would say it's not quite as good as Band on the Run. But if you're asking me what's my favorite Wings album, it's this one. I mean, and
Okay.
my favorite McCartney album.
Mm,
Period.
okay.
Wings, McCartney, anything. Uh, it's just brings back so many memories, and yeah, and I think it's a group effort. It's not just a Paul. Linda and Denny are supplying good input here, and Jimmy and Joe as well. And yeah, I prefer it to Ram. If you ask me to choose between this and Ram, yeah, I'll choose this one any day. In fact, Band on the Run for me has been a bit overplayed. Venus and Mars, I always had a bit of a problem with the production.
Mm,
I think the songs are pretty good. Speed of Sound is the opposite. I think the production is brilliant, but some of the songs are not quite up to it.
yeah.
But here, I just think it's a very long album. It's 52 minutes long.
Oh, I know it's got a lot of songs. I didn't add up the time, but I know one side has about 9 songs on it, I think. One, two, three, four, five, six, 8 songs.
But back in the
So,
day, Matt, if you were recording it onto a C90 cassette, you would have missed out more smooth and greatness. It might just have fit onto a side if you're lucky.
well, that would have been, I probably would have liked the album a lot more if that would have been the case. All right, John. Well, this is a great talk. people usually like to hear us go back and forth about some of this stuff, and we'll have to. So we were starting to do one album of every solo Beatle, so we've done that. Now this is our first second album. So McCartney, and we've done two. We've done Ram, and we've done this one. So maybe we're due for a
We
Lennon album next.
we haven't done Material World, have we yet?
We have not. We did 33 and a third for George and the Ringo album.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing Material World. I mean, just because we haven't got that many John albums to do, so if we do them in order, we're going to run out of John pretty quickly.
Well, yeah,
Um,
I mean, I'm game for that. Let's
okay.
put it on our very long lists here, and we'll see what people say. I mean, people will always want to offer what we should do next, but if
Yeah,
we want George
I'll
album
do
next,
Walls and Bridges if people want to do that. I don't think people will mind too much
hmm
once we
Okay,
get around to all of the decent ones at some stage.
yeah, that sounds
Then it
good to me.
becomes then it becomes a decision of where do you draw the line? Where do you
Well, we the one Lennon album we did do, we did sometime in New York City, so we got that dog out of the way.
well, we're going to do all the Lennon. It's just a question of where do you draw the line with McCartney? I mean, I don't see us doing a review of McCartney 3 anytime soon, do you?
Mm, I no. I mean, I there's no so my I did a video on the Beatles' overarching solo careers, and I call that the solo Beatles golden era is 1970 to about 1982, which would have been the album they did after Lennon was murdered. And that to me is the period of the greatest work, and I judge it in a different way, you know. So that's the era I think deserves the most praise. That's not to say others don't, but I think that's where I would like to stay in until we run out. Then we can venture into, the Flaming Pies and the Brainwashed and the what's the album with Weight of the World on it? I forget the name of that one. That's a pretty good album, the Ringo album.
Time takes time.
Time takes time. There you go. So I mean, I think maybe there's a pecking order here.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm stuck in the 70s, so I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's leave it at that. And those of you, this is appearing on Pop Goes the 60s, so everybody should get over to John's channel. It's got a great channel, great topics. I'll put a link to his channel below, and we will see you next time here on Pop Goes the 60s.
Cheers, guys. See you.